Pledge of Allegiance. All rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic which is
for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice.
justice for all.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is appointments to new appointments. Is Attorney Dave Hollenbeck on the line, or is he here?
I believe I am. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
well. I do,
Mr.
yeah.
Chairman, the report is that we have no new appointments since we last convened this group.
Okay, thank you, sir. Moving along, Meredith, you or whoever is calling the roll, and the approval of the minutes will be with the roll call. So has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
Yeah, move the approval.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'm sorry, who was second?
Richard Hardaway.
Thank you, Richard.
And do we have a second?
I'm the second.
All right.
Somebody
Jim
else
Tun.
made the motion.
The motion, who is the second?
Richard Hardaway.
Okay. Richard Hardaway made the motion. Do we have a second?
No, Richard
I
made the,
made the motion.
Oh, Jim Tun. Sorry, Jim.
Jim made the motion and I second.
Okay, my apologies.
That's all right. That's all right.
Okay, if there are no exceptions or any comments or questions, hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Okay, thank you. Since this is an executive board meeting, I will take the roll call of the executive board members first and follow that with the other commissioners. Ready? Bill Emerson,
Yes.
Richard Hardaway,
Yes.
Justin Keel,
Yes.
Sue Lynch,
Here.
Sheila Matias, Wendy Miss, Jim Pressel, Greg Stinson,
Yes.
Jim Tun,
Yes.
George Topple.
Yes. Okay,
That is 7, so we have met quorum. I will complete the roll call then at this point. Kyle Allen, Dwayne Arndt, Jeanette Baps, Janet Beck, Jeff Benson,
Here.
Jim Biggs,
Present.
Kevin Brightsky,
Here.
Charlie Brown, Bill Carroll, Robert Carnahan,
Here.
Anthony Copeland, Jocelyn Denham, John Derwinski,
Here.
Dinah Dumbris, Denise Ebert, Robert Forster, Tony Hendricks, Eric Hall, Jack Geralds, Andrew Kiris, Robert LeMay, Tom McDermott, Lori Mercer, Edward Morales, Matt Murphy, Dwayne Perry, David Peeler, Bob Paparad, Jerome Prince, Mike Rosenbaum, Rick Rifa, Tom Schmidt,
Here.
Brian Snedecor, Steve Spebar, Gerald Swets.
Yeah, could you?
Sorry? Sharon Zuido, Mary Tanis, John Yelkich, If there are any other commissioners that have joined the meeting and you didn't hear your name called, if you could let me know now.
Hi, Candace. Sheila Matias is here from LaPorte County.
Great, thank you, Sheila.
Thanks.
Any others? That concludes roll call.
Okay, thank you everyone for attending, and that the minutes are approved based on the vote of the executive board. Public comment on current agenda items. Members of the audience who signed up to comment on the items will be recognized by the chair. I don't know if we have any signed up or not. Time is limited to 3 minutes. Commenters must indicate prior to the start of the meeting. Do we have any public comment? There is no public comment apparently, so we'll move on to the next item. Mr. Hollenbeck, could you discuss the possibility of future potential remote hybrid meetings? Mr. Hollenbeck, are you there?
You know, Mr.
I'm
Chair. if
sorry, I
could-
was muted. I've got to realize in the office, I'm fondly referred to as the techno peasant. So I apologize for that. Let me start over again. We all had become very accustomed to the governor's monthly proclamation by way of his executive orders that we remained in a public health emergency situation because of the virus that we were fighting. Under the statute, his authority only goes for 30 days, and that's why he would wait till the last week of each month for the last 14 months and extend it. Those executive orders created our entitlement to meet remotely, as we have done for 14 months, in counter to what Indiana statute says about our need to be convening in person. That all changed last week when, for the first time, the governor entered an executive order in the middle of the month. And included in that executive order, he rescinded 13 components of his previous orders. So for the first time, his executive order started to shrink in terms of how people conduct themselves during the pandemic. One of those 13 rescissions was to rescind the authority he granted us to meet remotely. And so we were faced then with what are our options and alternatives? Well, he gave us one of those options and alternatives when he signed the week before House Enrolled Act 1437, which is an action by the General Assembly that contemplates our ability to continue to meet in different kinds of platforms as we go forward. What 1437 says is that as long as the governor continues a public health declaration by way of his executive orders, whether that particular executive order deals with the remote meeting concept by rescinding it, we can continue to meet remotely as we have. At such time as the public health emergency executive orders are ceased in their entirety, then 1437 allows us, if we are so inclined, it's important to remember that none of this is mandatory. We have the option, we can always meet in person, or we can use the provisions now of 1437 as opposed to his executive order where he rescinded the remote meeting process. 1437, after the public health emergency declarations are over, does not facilitate our ability to continue entirely remotely. It creates what is being called a hybrid system where you are entitled to utilize platforms such as Zoom and the other ones that are out there, as long as you have a nucleus of individuals who are in person available. We've always had the ability to include remote participation in our meetings by commission members, but under the law before the pandemic, those people could not be counted as a quorum, nor could they vote on any issue, but they certainly were welcome to participate. If we meet the criteria of 1437, we will be able to continue to allow remote participation, in all probability, not for purposes of creating a quorum, but for purposes of discussion and deliberation and indeed vote on matters that are before us. As to when this will where this paradigm will shift, and we'll be looking at the hybrid provisions of 1437. Candidly, my crystal ball is not that clear. Though some of you may have an ear closer to the ground than I do. There's an awful lot of talk coming out of Indianapolis, and now I'm getting out over my skis, but there's an awful lot of talk, and I happened to be with the governor on Monday, and he was talking about this additionally, of how wonderful the 4th of July is going to be, because we're going to be able to get back together and do all these things we haven't been able to do in the past, attend events and parades and all these things. That probably is at least the beginning of a signal of when the executive orders may end in terms of opening up for the 4th of July, but that's speculation on my part. We'll continue to monitor this and make sure that Ty and our chairman know what our options are at any given moment. I remember 14 months ago, there were a lot of us who were lamenting the fact that we weren't meeting in person. 14 months later, we're lamenting the fact that we may have to meet in person. So times do change. That's where we are, Mr. Chairman. I'll be happy to answer any questions that I have the ability to answer. I'm afraid some of the answers may be that we simply don't know how this is going to play out.
Thank you, Mr. Hollenbeck. Is there any comment or questions for Mr. Hollenbeck?
So I have a question or a comment. This is Sheila from LaPorte. Would it be helpful? I think this has allowed greater public participation as well as greater participation for all of us to be able to attend many more meetings in our area of expertise. Would it be helpful for us to weigh in with a resolution supporting the idea of permitting virtual meetings for our commission and then send that to our representatives at the governor's office?
Sheila, that probably is not a bad, probably not a bad idea. As you know, the General Assembly has gone home. And so anything that would come of that would be in the next session of the General Assembly. But there's a lot of things that are waiting for the next session of the General Assembly because of what went on during this one. But sure, if it's the consensus of the body that there is value to finding a means and a mechanism to continue virtual meeting in its entirety, the passing of a resolution to that effect and the forwarding of it to our senators and representatives would probably put it back on the radar screen. And I'm not saying we can't do it this way, but what I hear out of Indianapolis and specifically from the public counselor's office is the biggest detriment to doing this way is public participation and the need to preserve and protect the ability of the public to participate, which is kind of ironic because under you folks who run public meetings know full well, there's nothing in Indiana law that requires public participation in a meeting. The public has a right to view it. Now, most units of government do allow questions and public participation, but it's not a matter of law. it's a matter of common sense and wisdom. So I guess the answer to your question is sure. That's something that I'm sure our elected reps and senators would take into consideration.
Well, I would just respond, Dave, we had our county commission meeting last night. And what our experience in LaPorte County is, we're a large geographic area. We have better public participation now where people can log in on Zoom and observe our meetings. And also we have, when it is time for public comment, we have many more people participating. So I would venture to say quite the opposite. It's allowed us, to have an environmentally friendly, and everyone doesn't have to jump into their gas consuming cars and drive to our county seat for a meeting. They're able to stay in their home and observe and participate. So I would venture to say it's quite the opposite of the observations you mentioned.
Yeah, I think what they hinge their concern on is the lack of availability of the internet for portions of Indiana.
Are there any other comments? Yeah, I would think that perhaps we might want to get a group of us together to consider the comments that Mr. Matthias provided there, and to see what we might like to see this look like.
And there is, I think we do need to do that, Mr. Chairman. 2 comments in that regard. And Ty, correct me if I'm wrong, we do not have a June meeting.
Correct.
And the legislature won't be back till the fall. So we do have some time to craft this and get it out and get it to our legislators.
I'd like to make a comment.
Go
May I
ahead.
make a comment?
Go ahead, Mr. Tun.
We've been meeting in the town council for the last 2 months, twice a month in person. And we've had a lot of positive input on our availability to the public and through discussion and deliberation in a public setting. And I really think that it's time for us to get back together. I don't feel that we're being as responsive as we could to the public if we're not. The lady's comments are respectfully taken, I understand, but a lot of us have already been meeting publicly for several months. So I don't see why NERC can't do the same thing.
I guess that's why, Mr. Chairman, we need to discuss this and determine how we want to proceed as NERC.
Perhaps the members of the executive board and all the other commissioners might want to provide some input, comments on this particular issue, if they so choose, and then we'll see where that goes and then see what the next step might be. Any thoughts or comments?
Mr. Chair, I agree with both Jim and Sheila in different ways. I think that there's a lot of benefits to being able to attend remotely completely like this. As someone who lives about as far away as you can get in NERC, it's definitely convenient to be able to attend remotely. But I also agree with what Mr. Tun is saying, that it's, I have concerns about meeting entirely virtually all the time for forever. I'm wondering, Ty, would you be able to elaborate? Has anyone commented from the public or other commissioners about how accessible they feel these virtual meetings are? Has anyone spoken up about it?
I have not received any specific comments. I mean, other than the helpful one that Zulie had offered that led to us, well, we've got the ability to do closed captioning now so that you can make sure that all folks can participate depending on their ability. But I have not heard specific commentary about the virtual environment. Just to back up what Sheila said, I just have heard anecdotally that, and I think our own attendance has generally been higher since we went to virtual. I was saying that actually when Dave and I were talking about this issue the other day, just to be honest, the attendance for our own commission meetings was higher than it had ever been at the start of the pandemic. And as time has gone on here, I don't know if it's fatigue or what, but it has not maintained the same level of involvement from our commissioners themselves. But I get the sense that a lot of folks are still participating that maybe otherwise weren't available or weren't able to do. We had started live streaming on YouTube for some time though, prior to the pandemic, and that we don't have an accurate count of how many folks were participating that way. So it's hard to give a quantitative answer to that. We had already started streaming our meetings way before this began.
Is
And I
some,
see Zulia's commented while we were talking here and said that she is urging us to keep the virtual meeting option available for anyone who wanted to attend that way. And I completely agree. There should at the bare minimum be at least a way that someone can attend virtually if they want to. Whether or not the rest of us officials do, I think it's worth having a deeper discussion about it maybe.
comments well taken. I think that sounds like at a minimum that may be a great option for those who are unable to get to the location. As far as voting and attendance and quorum, I guess those things would have to be taken into consideration as well.
George, I'm sorry, excuse me. I just wanted to say that if we're given the option, I'll be there.
Well, I plan to be there too in person, and I think we would need to have at least the key people there, which would indicate the majority of the commissioners, and that goes into another thing that I was going to discuss, but I'll bring it up right now. We only had what was a response tie from our inquiry as to participation on committees after 4 inquiries.
Yeah,
You want to wait?
35 out of 53. Got that as my first slide when we get to that item.
Okay, well, we'll hold off on that. So if we can, my point being that I think we need to have options available, but I think we also need to indicate that we do need to meet in person to a certain extent, because there's, as nice as this is as an option, I think we do need to see each other in person, and the intercommunications is different. It's a different atmosphere on the Zoom and the other types of meetings than it is in person.
If I might add, something else that I've always felt has been a benefit of NERPC is when you attend in person, before and after the meeting, I often find myself talking with other elected officials, discussing things we're doing in our communities, and often also talking with NERPC staff afterwards. And I found myself, I'd be up in Portage and spending an hour after the meetings doing other business and stuff. And I found that to always be very valuable. And you do lose that in a virtual setting.
I think
That's
that
true.
person network, I concur that is an excellent means to get to know one another on a more personal basis.
George, you'll recall, George, that we used to meet once a month.
Yes.
Now, it's executive board and full commission, not even once a month. So I don't think it's an overly demanding task to get there with the new schedule. It used to be every month. So
I remember, and I think that there should be more in-person participation. But I think that the option on maybe a limited occasion might be something that we may consider, but it's not my choice. It's the choice of the body.
I'm not against options. I'm just stating where I'll be, and that'll be there.
I think that's great. Thank you, Jim.
So George, can we do like a hybrid meeting where we encourage the members to show up, but if they can't for any reason, then we have a screen there so the public can see them speaking when they present?
Well, I think that was one of the options that we were discussing with Mr. Hollenbeck earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, Mayor, the answer to that is as long as we can comply with the provisions of 1437, the answer is yes, we can do that.
So should we make that, carry that on to the July meeting to see if we can come up with those interested and then have well, we don't want another committee, but maybe it can fit into another committee to bring that up as a topical issue. Are there any other comments? Because we could move on, because I think we're going to cover some of these things in, well, not so much my remarks, but the remarks of the Executive Director, Ty Warner. So is there anything else that anyone wants to discuss on that issue 5.0, possibility of remote hybrid meetings? Hearing none, we'll go on to the report of the chair, and this is going to be brief. One of the issues that Ty and I have talked about is the participation, which kind of goes hand in hand, which segues nicely into Executive Director Warner's remarks that he was going to discuss, and we had met earlier. I'd like to compliment Mr. Warner on all the work that he did on coming up the committee assignments. So with that, I'll say, take it away, Ty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have a few things, but I want to actually kick this right over to Peter Kimball and Kevin Polita on our staff, just to take a moment. Peter's got another thing he has to get to in 5 minutes. We just sent out a press release regarding a project that we just completed that Kevin and Peter had been heavily involved in, as well as Alan Hammond and our staff, to document and survey every bus stop in Northwest Indiana and provide photographic resources where you can see exactly the parameters of that bus stop, and before you go and check things out before you end up at that location. So I don't want to take anything away from them, but I'm going to kick it right over to Peter and Kevin. I think they're going to share their screen and show you what that looks like. Great, thanks. So as Ty mentioned, let me get my screen shared here. This was kind of a two-part project here, where we took all the data that Kevin collected that he'll talk about in a second and gave that to all the transit operators. And we finally completed the second part of the project here, where we actually created a map for the public and everybody to use featuring that data. So Kevin, if you just want to talk about the collection.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go on from there. So to start off, we went to every single bus stop in Northwest Indiana, which included all the ones from the Gary Public Transit Corporation, the V Line, including the South Shore Connect, Chicago Dash, the East Chicago Transit, the Michigan City Wave, and the Triangle Transit. And we took pictures and did an inventory, as well as collected data for ADA compliance. So some of the data that we collected at each of them was obviously location, like the cross streets that it falls on, and what side of the intersection it falls on, which is all good stuff to know. Obviously, we looked for, is there signage present for all of these bus stops, other information at the stops, such as like hotlines and maps or timetables for all of these. For ADA compliance, which is one of the main things we were looking into. One of the biggest things is like having a good surface for the people with ADA needs to be able to get to these bus stops on, which is very important, and also that the condition of them is good. So with that, we also looked at the size of the landing, which most of the time for all of these bus stops was sidewalks, but other times it was just grass and dirt. So we took data on all of that to see if we could improve some of these spots. So for the most part, a lot of them were very good, but one of the issues that we ran into a lot is when they're at the intersections is sometimes the curb cuts that lead from the street, if they have to cross the street at the intersection up to the sidewalk, needed work. So we took data on that and we looked to see if those were up to ADA compliance and up to standards. And then one of the other things that we thought was really important was looking into the connectivity for the same exact issue. Because if there is a sidewalk that's good, just for like a block, unless you're in that block, you can't really get to it. So we looked for 2 or more blocks away from each other to see if the connectivity was good in that area. So some other attributes that we looked at all of these bus stops was to see if there's a shelter, if the shelter opening was large enough, as well as the shelter for someone in a wheelchair to be able to get in and out of there. Some other things we looked at was, is there seating available at these bus stops? Is there trash cans, bike parking? A few of them have heating, which was really nice, but not too many of them. Also, is there bathrooms nearby? Is this a place where you can park and ride and then get on the bus? And then the last one is is it a transit facility location? So the Gary Metro Station in downtown Gary, you can go inside and get information from. Also, the Marquette Mall in Michigan City has a place where you can go in and talk to people and get information in there. And we also documented that in all of our data too. So that's pretty much all the data that we collected at all of these. And I will send more map stuff over to Peter.
So the map is located on our website. You can get to it by going to the transit page in the drop-down menu here. And we incorporated all the data onto a Google map. That made the most sense because through the Google map, you can click on this view map larger. And this map's also kind of unique because it shows where you can connect between the various transit operators we have in the region. You can go ahead and enter your address to find the nearest stop to you. And to see the actual information itself, you're gonna click on a stop, like here, for example, and everything that Kevin mentioned is listed here, included with a link to the transit operator themselves and a view of the photos of the stop that Kevin got out in the field. Beyond that, at the bottom of the page here, there's more detailed instructions on how to use the map and links to all the transit operators. And that is pretty much the project.
Excellent, thanks. Thanks, Peter and Kevin. This is, I hope it's obvious as you look at the demo of what they've just done. You know, if you take any amount that you take uncertainty away from the transit trip, which is one of the things that discourages folks of not knowing how to navigate it. Are they going to be able to access the stop? Are they going to be able to access the bus when they get there? What's the situation like when they go to the stop? Anything you can do to reduce that uncertainty is a huge step forward. So very grateful for all the work that went into this, and I think it'll prove very helpful going forward. Thanks,
question, Bob
Yeah.
Carnahan.
Go ahead, Bob.
What's the number of bus stops in Northwest Indiana? How many?
So I went ahead and just counted them all, and I came up with 561.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Kevin, Bill Emerson, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay. I was just clicking around on it right now. This is a really cool project. I'm struck by how much more spaced out the stops are in Hammond, Gary, Maryville than they are in Valpo and in Portage.
Yeah, Gary reaches out to Hammond. It reaches all the way out to Merrillville. I think they have a couple in Highland, and then like all the way over to the Porter County line. So they reach a huge area. I don't think David Wright is on here, but I did a lot of it. But David Wright is really the expert on Gary. So
yeah, it's just interesting that the stops are so spaced, so much more spaced out. You know what I mean? Like in Valpo, they're clustered almost every block they're stopping, it looks like.
Yeah, and I will say with Gary, they have different, like, I'll call them like arms or branches, like different areas only go, like different buses only go to different areas. So it's not like they're all like trying to go in one area. Yeah. Like some of them only go all the way to Hammond. It's just like one arm or branch of the system.
Mm-hmm. That's a cool project.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I'll encourage you to go and check it out. Like Kevin showed you on the website, where you can access it from the mobility tab and go to transit, and you can look to your heart's content at what they've done there. So thanks again, Kevin and Peter and Alan. Alan's not on the call, but thanks for all of your work on this. Really good stuff. So for those of you who are on this call from the press, we did send out a press release, so feel free to check that out yourselves when you receive that. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Peter, I know you got to go, so thank you. I am going to get to the committee assignments very shortly, but I do have a couple of things I want to just bring to your attention before that. First of all, I want to just make an introduction. She's en route to O'Hare, so I don't know if she's going to be able to show herself or not, but Marie Foster Bruns is, oh, there you go, awesome. So she's traveling as we speak, so you can get a glimpse of the trip to the airport. Marie is the new president and CEO of One Region that was just announced recently. So she was very gracious to jump on here last minute so we could introduce her. Marie, you don't have to say anything, but if you want to, you are more than welcome. I know you're in a vehicle, so just want to welcome you.
Hi everyone, it's so great to meet you. I've been listening in and am very impressed with everything that's going on. And I look forward to working with all of you and to meeting you out in the community or even at a variety of different meetings. But if you do feel like you need to reach out to me and you want to visit and kind of share your vision, please let me know. I'm more than happy to connect with you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Marie. And again, thanks for jumping on even while you're traveling. And look forward to working with you. I think everybody here does. So
Thank
welcome
you,
aboard. You bet.
Thanks.
Great. And then, so something a little more on the sad side of things. I don't know how many folks that are on the commission have been around long enough to have worked with Jim Ranfranz. Jim was the second executive director of NERC. I'm the fourth, so there have not been that many in NERC's history, going back to about 1966 or so. We received word since the last commission meeting that we had that Jim had passed away. Jim had moved down to Florida, and he had been with NERC for 35 years, and he left for Florida in 2003. And for those that are familiar with Jim's work, and for the extent that he had been with NERC since joining as deputy director in 1968, he was instrumental in many things that still affect this region to this day. The Borman Expressway, him having formed a Borman task force to look at expansion of that when it was heavily congested. We travel that almost every day around here, and that impact is certainly felt, as well as a lot of people don't know this or have forgotten it, but NICD, Northern Indiana Community Transportation District, that was formed partly at Jim's urging with the Indiana legislature, and NICD was actually housed at NERC before becoming a stronger entity to manage the South Shore commuter rail line. And those are just a couple of the legacies that Jim has left. And so again, I don't know how many folks on this call now, or even on the commission for that matter, have been around for that length of time to have worked with Jim. But just wanted to acknowledge him and remember him. And I did reach out to Dave Hollenbeck. Dave worked with Jim when, I forget, Dave, when you came on helping NERC, but I think it was in the 90s or so. But you did have an overlap with Jim, and I asked Dave if he'd like to share a comment.
Thank you, Ty. I lost a good friend when Jim Rantrans passed. Jim took over, as Ty has alluded, as our second executive director after Norm Tufford. Norm took us from our infancy kind of into adolescence. Jim took over as our parent, and we were a bunch of teenage kids. But Jim had a vision of what this place could be. When I think of somebody being referenced as a region person, I think of Jim Rantrans. He was a regional person before regionalism was the popular thing to be talking about. In fact, he made it popular by the way he conducted himself and how hard he worked for the region. The best example of that and Ty has alluded to some of the things he brought to us, but in a broader sense, my best recollection of Jim is he was impatient with all of us. He wanted us all to be better than we were. And one of the ways he manifested that is he wanted this metropolitan planning organization that was principally the conduit through which federal money passed for transportation issues. And that we're not that still today, and that's very important. But he saw a different role and responsibility for NERC of bringing people together. We talked a little bit about this in terms of even this meeting format. I don't know what Jim would have done on Zoom, okay? But what Jim made us aware of is what we could be. And one of the ways we could be what we could be is get together and speak as one voice. Now, we still struggle with that today, but he really pushed us to collaborate and cooperate and get things done on a regional basis, because we spoke when we went to Indianapolis or went to the feds, we spoke with one voice in Northwest Indiana. And the biggest way that was manifested is it was his vision that we should be more than a metropolitan planning organization. We should be what is referred to in our statute as a council of governments. And that means that we bring people together, the large communities, the small communities, and everything in between, to sit down, as Jim alluded to, or others here this morning in our discussion. And if we have issues, talk them out and find commonality of purpose, and find resolutions of issues that made us better as a region. So the fact that we sit today in both capacities as a metropolitan planning organization, as an MPO, and also as a council of governments is the doing of Jim Ranfranz. And as I started my little talk, lost a friend, a guy who taught me a lot about what it meant to care about this area in a regional context. Ty, thanks for the opportunity to talk about it.
Dave, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate you sharing that experience. And as I said, even if I did not have the ability to meet him in person, and even if you did not, as David said and has already been said several times, the impacts of what he has done, we continue to feel in this region. So thank you.
Ty Bob Carnahan.
Mm-hmm.
Jim would have a hospitality suite at what was then called the Indiana Association of Cities and Towns, and give us an opportunity to show off what we did up here in Northwest Indiana, and have our representatives that aren't on the NERC board would gather there, and him and Mayor Forsythe would sing at some of the activities. And Belinda Bukowski, she kind of spearheaded the operation at Indiana Association of Cities and Towns. And I worked very close with him, but I wasn't on the NERC board at that time.
I left out any reference to his singing ability on purpose.
Okay.
Very good. Well, thank you for that memory, Bob. And again, I know there have been many stories about Jim Ranfranz. So thank you for letting us take the time a little bit this morning to acknowledge everything that he's contributed. So thank you very much. Just one more item now before going to the committee assignments and that whole issue. If you recall, we had an EDA boot camp back on April 22nd with the Development Administration, and extremely positive feedback from that as far as helping the applications that your communities are preparing for the Economic Development Administration's funding programs, helping them to be more competitive and what to be looking for and what to be preparing for. We think we've also talked about, ever since the approval of by Congress of the American Rescue Plan, $3 billion of funds was allocated to the Economic Development Administration, and that will be any day, before the end of this month, out in a notice of funding opportunity. And so, as we said at that boot camp, the time to be thinking about potential projects is now, since we want Northwest Indiana to be very competitive in this process when it comes out. So just a couple of quick notes on that, and we do have an item on the Economic Development District later in the agenda, but I wanted to go ahead and say now, as we've said on multiple times, please reach out to us in advance so that we can help with your applications. Denery Kane is our economic development person and your contact to work with on applications and can help you navigate the EDA. And the sooner that you contact Denery and talk to her about your potential projects, the better. She can help navigate those landmines and the eligibility issues and funding issues and all of that. So the sooner the better. And also in the whole arena of for being as proactive as possible, is part of the application. We'll need a letter from us that says that the project is consistent with our comprehensive economic development strategy, or CEDS document, CEDX. And so we just, to try to be practical and allow time to review that with working with the other potential applicants in the region, we're asking for a minimum 10 days advance on that letter so that we have time to thoroughly make sure that it hits the buttons that the EDA is looking for. So again, I guess the fundamental message is the sooner the better in trying to work on these applications. When that hits, when that NOFO, that Notice of Funding Opportunity, hits from the U.S. Economic Development Administration, it is competitive. And so the better the applications are, the more prep work that has gone into them, and the more come from this region, the better opportunity we will have to access those funding dollars. So I just wanted to put that on their radar screen, and we'll probably hit it again later in the agenda when we get to the Economic Development District portion. So thanks for letting me talk about that. And now I think the moment you've all been waiting for, is the committee assignments. I do have a brief presentation I want to take you through. Let me share my screen to be able to do that.
Okay. Do you have the listing?
I do. I'm going to walk through this. Can you let me know if you can see? You should see a presentation, I believe. Looks good. It's just somebody just tell me if you can see that. Okay, it should just be a title.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So let me go through the results of the interest survey that we did and why we asked the questions we did, and then go on to the list that George and I worked with together. So let me just advance here for some reason. Okay. So this was, George alluded to this earlier, just our response rate on the survey. We did put several requests out for those that we hadn't received a response from. In the end, by today, we had 35 out of our 53 respond to the survey. You can see how that breaks down by our Lakeport and LaPorte folks. And if you're ever curious how many commissioners are from each one of those counties, that's right there on that left bar. You can see how that stacks up. So that's the response rate we had to the survey that we did. And we asked a couple of questions at the end. I've just put them up here at the front, just so you can see where those shook out if you were curious of those 35 that responded. A couple of questions that we needed to ask. Our Title VI program asks us the composition of our board, and I'm certainly not comfortable identifying for you where you fit in these particular categories that come from the Association of Institutional Research, but are asked of us in the Title VI issue. So we ask you to self-identify. This is the NERC composition according to those 35 folks that responded. And then another question we asked is asked from us by the Economic Development Administration as part of our Economic Development District designation. And that is to see if the board, which is currently designated as the NERC Commission, is hitting the marks that the EDA wants to see in representation of general economic interest throughout the region. So that's why we ask you these questions. And I'm happy to say that we, of those 35, and again, we didn't get all 53 to respond, 53 commissioners, but even in those 35, we at least hit one of all the perspectives that the EDA is looking for to be represented on that board. So that is a good thing. And that was the last two questions we asked you on their survey. But now I'm just going to go kind of briefly through the responses to each one of these topic areas. I'm not going to dwell on each one, but I have arranged these slides in order of the blue portion of the pie chart, which is those that responded. They were very interested in this topic area. And you can see the summary in the bottom right that we put on the survey as a brief description of what went into this particular topic area. And as I noted in the introduction to that survey, we purposely went to ask about topic areas, not the specific committees that we currently have, for reasons that I'll go into shortly. But again, if you keep your eye on that blue portion of the pie, this will get significantly smaller as we go through these topic areas. And I don't want to take a lot of time in each one, but maybe you can take in just in the bottom right, generally what that topic is about. Active transportation, the previous one was economic development, active transportation, environmental issues, roads and highways, government revenue and incentives, transit, housing, broadband internet connectivity, financial and administrative matters, land use planning, public engagement, resource sharing, and freight. So that stacks up. Again, this is purely asking what your of 4 options. We made it multiple choice to make the survey as simple as possible. Of those 4 options, these are the ones that were somebody had said they were very interested in this topic, going from highest percentage down to lowest percentage. But that does not mean that those other topics are unimportant. If I put on top of this graph those that responded, they were somewhat interested in these topics, then we have some spikes at the further right of this chart, particularly in land use and resource sharing. So again, it's not to say the other topics are unimportant, but if you're ranking with only 4 options, the ones that you're particularly interested in are reflected more towards the left of this chart. And the reason for asking this is where does our committee structure hit the items that you're most interested in? Is it responsive to where the NERC Commission itself is wanting to try to gain value out of what the commission does? So that helps inform whether we are staffing these committees appropriately and creating the right committee structure to deal with that. The easiest way to think about how these things are viewed is within the 3 areas that are in NERC's enabling statute. I think all of you know that NERC is the only regional council in Indiana that is actually written into state statute that dictates our structure. And it says that we develop plans and programmings for 3 areas. And those areas are right here: transportation, environment, and economic development. So those are the 3 buckets, if you will, or 3 areas that NERC participates in and has programs for. And these match right along, not surprisingly, with the federal programs that we are designated to administer. So in transportation, we are the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, which is what most folks know us for. That's a designation from the United States Department of Transportation. In the environmental sphere, we have a brownfields grant from the EPA and other grants that have been put together to flesh out that arm of NERC. And then, as I've talked about many times, with the economic development district designation, we had always participated in economic development, but now we have a specific federal designation and program in the area of economic development with our economic development district from the Economic Development Administration. So if I look at those 3 areas and the results of the surveys, they fit into these 3 buckets or areas of our statutory ability. You can see how those fit within each one of those program areas. Then to step back to our current committee structure, you remember this diagram from back in 2015 when the commission adopted a revision in our committee makeup that was itself a revision of what was much more of an organizational chart looking structure. The attempt in this was to streamline the committees, and as you see, and as we've acknowledged many times, and the work of putting this together did not actually result in less committees, but it did result in a bit more organizational flow with how things move through committees. But things happen over time, and since 2015, we've had a chance to see how this structure has worked or what hasn't worked. If I try to simplify that committee structure just by trying to put those committees within 3 categories of our statute: transportation, environment, and economic development, you can see how these start fitting into those buckets. So you get to the bottom of this page, we have freight, land use, and local government assistance. Going back upwards, Environment Management and Policy Committee handles environment, and then the Transportation Sphere, Technical Planning Committee, Transportation Resource and Oversight, Surface Transportation, PED-PAL-PEDAL, and the transit operators. But then the Economic Development Administration would like us to have a specific Economic Development Committee that meets those designated economic interest areas that I showed on that earlier survey. On top of that, we should have a committee for the revolving loan fund that we have from the Economic Development Administration, which is currently vested in the Finance and Personnel Committee. But that's not all the committees that we now have or are expected to have. We also have some committees that don't fall as neatly into those 3 areas of transportation, environment, and economic development, but fall into a general governance category: the finance, personnel, legislative, and outreach. And we surveyed similar sounding topics there, you can see on your right. So that's 14 committees that we are talking about theoretically having to not only have filled with commissioners, but to handle staffing of those committees, agendas, minutes. As you can imagine, as I know from your own work in your own communities, that can be extremely time consuming. So over 15 years, we've worked with this committee structure. That's a lot of committees. And over time, these committees, what we call our topical committees there on the left, those have struggled with attendance and has been a little bit uneven as we carry through. Some have been more attended more regularly than others. And as we've tracked attendance and who's going to these meetings, they're often the same people. So that starts calling into question whether these are truly needing to be separate committees. The rail committee was so low, it was morphed into the surface transportation committee. So we got rid of one. The transit operators roundtable realized as time went on that it was a very technical committee of talking about operational concerns for transit. It didn't quite fit into the same scheme. So I'm over dramatizing that they essentially seceded from the union and declared themselves more of an independent body out of this structure. The outreach committee focused on the public participation plan and really morphed into a task force to get that plan completed, which is a federal requirement of ours. And that was very well received and an excellent plan, but their task was finished and stopped meeting at that point. Local government assistance had many ideas of how to pull that together, none of which really took hold. Legislative committee has met infrequently, and as has been mentioned by others that have served in that committee, unfortunately never got proactive enough to try to get out ahead of the legislature. It was always reacting to things that were currently in the works. And there's opportunity there, but I'm just kind of laying the scene how things have been since 2015. And then Finance and Personnel Committee, quite frankly, has usually had more staff present than commissioners present at that committee, which has made for a sad working of how this is phased out over time since 2015. So we asked you these topics again to try to see, to help inform what is the right committee structure for NERC and where should we be thinking about how we can best contribute to the work that NERC is expected to do under state statute. Again, going back to these three topic areas and making sure that the interests that were expressed are divided up into those areas. They fall into those three categories and is a much more cohesive way to think about those. In addition to this general category that I mentioned of general governance, where there's more of an overall NERC structure working, works much better to try to focus that down to those three areas plus this general area. I don't know about you, but for me, 4 committees to focus on is much better than 14 to try to ask folks to attend and staff. So the issue, though, is that this is one of those things that needs a full commission activity to full commission vote to change the committee structure, as was done in 2015. You'll notice in the NWI 2050, again, no accident that these are all syncing very nicely. This is our long-range regional transportation plan and listed these 4 focus areas that fall into these exact same categories when this plan was adopted: economy, which is economic development; environment, mobility, which is transportation; and people and leaders, which is this general governance category. So the right baked into the NWI 2050, which also carried over into NERC's website in this top menu bar, the way we've divided up the different activities of NERC. So this 4-part structure is already well in place, and I think it's going to serve us much better. So I'm going to go to the committee assignments that George and I worked on, but I just want to throw this out there to say that we have this time period before a full commission meeting in July, and would like to work towards having discussions about this, and any feedback that you have about that, if you can call me or contact me and talk more about your thoughts about the general committee structure. We have the opportunity to make a change to that to try to make this more effective and more robust. So if I take the committees that we've made the assignments for, and again, plunk them into these 4 general areas, this is the way that we have done the committee assignments, which is keeping our current committees, which was adopted in 2015, so we can't abandon those immediately. But to think in terms of how these committees fit into these larger main focus areas that match with our state statute as well as a general operational issue. So let me real quickly then stop sharing that and go to one more screen just to show you real quickly the structure. So sorry, let me do that and that. Okay, you should start seeing the listing now. I don't want you to feel like you need to panic and write down the committees that you're on. We will send this out to you, so don't worry about this. But as you can see, I've broken these under the 4 areas that I've just listed in that earlier presentation. The transportation area, these 3 committees, pedal and paddle, surface transportation committee. And again, don't feel, we'll send this to you and contact you, so don't sweat this. The technical planning committee, which does have in our current structure very specific representational requirements. Many of these you'll notice carried on from well, actually going back to 2019, during the pandemic, we made very changes to this. In the environmental area, environmental management and policy committee. Then in the economic development area, land use, local government assistance. And then this general governance area that I talked about would be the category for finance and personnel, legislative, and outreach. And then these two other bodies that continue to operate, the Transit Operators Roundtable, as I mentioned, has it's really made up of technical aspects and operators, so that continues. We did not designate commissioners to that this time around because of that refocusing of that roundtable. And then the TROC, the Transportation Resource and Oversight, has, I think, proven to be very beneficial. Charles Bradsky has essentially chaired that and worked with that already, and will continue to do that as a staff-led function, working with your own staff, engineers and planners and whatnot, which is what that committee is made up on. So we did not designate commissioners to these two bodies, and they'll continue to function. So thanks for bearing with me on that presentation. We'll get the assignments out to you, but with the understanding that we're trying to move towards what I think is a much simpler structure to hit what NERC needs to cover in a more thorough and concentrated way in the future. Will help our staffing situation, and I think will help with some of the maybe asking too much, if I can put it that way, of committee assignments across a wide variety of committees. So as we move towards a potential structure, again, I invite your feedback and comments as you want to reach out to me, or George for that matter, and give your feedback on where we may try to head to try to make this committee structure much more effective. So thanks for bearing with me. That's all I have on that.
Okay, thank you, Ty. That was an excellent report, and I know that you put a lot of time and effort into that, and just want to say thank you on behalf of myself and I presume the rest of the commissioners. The next item on the agenda is Finance and Personnel. Mr. Greg Stinson, would you take it away, please, Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance and Personnel Committee met this morning to review the financial reports for April 2021. Also reviewed were bank reconciliations and claims registers for April 2021. There is one action for consideration by the Commission today. That is Resolution 21-13. This resolution is based on a directive from the State Board of Accounts regarding the establishment of a policy for electronic funds transfers and online banking for special districts. This resolution will give NERC staff the authority to authorize electronic funds transfers for payment of claims. It also authorizes NERC to accept various payments, including electronic payments. With the Commission's approval, F&P forwards this resolution with a positive recommendation. And that's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stinson. Are there any questions or comments about the resolution? Resolution 21-13. Okay, hearing no questions or comments, I entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Richard Hardaway.
Okay, thank you, Richard.
Second.
And we have a second from
Greg.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, are there any comments or questions at this point? Okay, hearing none, take a roll call vote of the executive board.
Bill Emerson,
Yes.
Richard Hardaway,
Yes.
Justin Keel,
Yes.
Sue Lynch,
Yes.
Sheila Matias,
Yes.
Wendy Miss.
Votes yes.
Thank you. Jim Pressel, Greg Stinson,
Yes.
James Tunn,
Yes.
George Topple.
Yes.
That concludes roll call with 9 voting yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Moving on to the next item. on the agenda, and that would be the Nerdsey Economic Development District Report by Desiree King.
Hi, George.
Hi.
Go ahead, Ty. Do you want
No,
to?
no, you're good. I was just going to offer if you weren't available, but if you want to take this, that's great.
No, please go ahead on the resolution and then I'll follow up on that.
That sounds great. So this resolution that we put before you is exactly the same of a prior resolution that you adopted last year, which just authorized me to submit for our planning partnership grant with the Economic Development Administration. This is putting aside the CARES Act and those other things that we have special funds to do. This is the ongoing financial support for administering the Economic Development District. And I was under the belief that the resolution that you passed last year authorizing me to apply for that grant did the trick, so to speak, in us continuing to renew that grant every year. But in talking to the EDA, they would like to see a new resolution. So there's nothing different than this than was last year, but we will need to do this on an annual basis every time it comes time to reapply for those operating assistance dollars for the Economic Development District. So with that, we're just maybe looking for a motion and a second and approval of this resolution.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Bill Emerson.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments on this particular resolution? Hearing none, shall we take the roll call vote, please?
Yes. Bill Emerson,
Yes.
Richard Hardaway,
Yes.
Justin Keel,
Yes.
Sue Lynch,
Yes.
Sheila Matias,
Yes.
Wendy Miss,
Votes yes.
Jim Pressel, Greg Stinson,
Yes.
Jim Tunn,
Yes.
George Topple,
Yes.
9 voting yes.
Okay, with the motion is approved and is carried, and we'll move on to the next item.
Mr. Topol. If I could just report out quickly on a few short items. We have created a short list of consultants through the RFQ process. There are 5 that will receive the RFP for the resiliency plan. And then the other item is follow up to what Ty mentioned about the calls for projects. James Winters has been getting pretty busy because he does field these calls across the state of Indiana. So again, just encourage you to reach out to me and I'll coordinate with him in order to schedule those project calls once we hear from you. So thank you.
Does that conclude your report then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. All righty then. The approval of that resolution 21-12, and moving on to the Klein Avenue Bridge update. Terry Belligan, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, George. Good morning, respected commissioners, and I appreciate from Ty Warner and Chair George Topol to allow me to give you an update on the Klein Avenue Bridge. This presentation is more of an update, but I want to put this out there that we at Klein Avenue understand our responsibility and role in how valuable infrastructure is in Northwest Indiana. So this presentation is really premised on that idea that we're looking at our role in the community, our role in infrastructure, our role in Northwest Indiana. So I want to put that out there as that's our focus through this presentation. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you allowing me to provide an update. If you would go to the next slide, please. So I'm sure, my name is Terry Velligan. I'm the General Manager of Operations for the Klein Avenue Bridge. through this presentation. If you have any questions that I may answer here, or if you have any questions outside of here, you have my contact information up on the screen. Just give you a little background of myself. I was born and raised in Northwest Indiana, mostly in East Chicago, and then St. John, Indiana. My whole family was born at St. Catharines in East Chicago. So there's two sides of this story for me. One, a professional side in which I'm the general manager of operations, and then a personal side, which I grew up in East Chicago, and it gives me a sense of pride to work on this project, knowing how much of an impact this has had being gone from Northwest Indiana, and how much of an impact potentially this will have on Northwest Indiana, specifically for East Chicago, Hammond, and Gary. So next slide, please. So today my goal is to explain what is Klein Avenue, why it matters, the impact to you, not necessarily personally, but as a commission, as a group, as a traveling public, and in participation in Northwest Indiana project. Also the impact to industry and the traveling public, and specifically to carriers. We use the term carriers. A lot of generalization is trucks, but we specifically look at carriers through Northwest Indiana. Next slide, please.
And this is a video, I believe, so.
The new Klein Avenue Bridge is now open to save you time and take you to the moments that matter faster. As the gateway of Lake County, Indiana, it's your shortcut between Chicago and Northwest Indiana, potentially saving you half an hour and over 10 miles versus the Borman Expressway. Use it to get home faster, take the stress out of your commute, and access area industries and attractions. Try it today and see why the Klein Avenue Bridge is the shortcut you've been waiting for.
I appreciate that, Ty. So this was a 30-second commercial that we promoted through a lot of different television stations in the Chicagoland area in Northwest Indiana. And really our premise is that we understand our role again as an infrastructure, as a private business, but also to further the mission of everybody in Northwest Indiana in terms of how valuable our resources and attractions are in Northwest Indiana. And we want to really promote people to use the Klein Avenue Bridge as a gateway to Northwest Indiana. So our real goal is to highlight a lot of attractions and show the benefit of visiting Northwest Indiana. So I want to go into a little history. I'm sure a lot of people understand the history, but I want to revisit it a little bit because I think that we at Klein Avenue Bridge looked at it in two ways. One, it's not just a physical bridge, but in talking to a lot of people in the public and a lot of people around Northwest Indiana, they really have an intimate and personal connection to Klein Avenue Bridge. So the bridge was closed in 2009 after 26 years of service. And it crosses the harbor and ship canal in East Chicago. Formerly, over 35,000 vehicles traverse the bridge daily. Obviously, given the economic climate, the people moving out of East Chicago, Hammond, and Gary, probably more south, that number has diminished. The overview is, we say it's the gateway of Lake County. It connects SR 912 to the Skyway and Highway 90. And it really is the most direct route in and out of Lake County, saving time, especially from the south, Griffith, Maryville, Crown Point, off the Borman. We opened up in December of 2020, and I saw a lot of people from the commission and around Lake County at our opening ceremony. So thank you, Ty, thank you. The length is over 1 mile. We have 2 lanes, which the old bridge was 4. We dropped that down to 2, just given the fact that not a lot of traffic, given that 35,000 vehicles traversed that back in 2009. We see that number diminish, so we put 2 lanes in, and if that number increases, then we have the ability to put in 2 more lanes to accommodate that number of travel. The vertical height is 100 feet. That was a mandate, especially over the canal, given that the canal is still in use. We couldn't drop it down further, and there was no reason to increase that height. Next slide, please. Just give you a map of where it's located. I'm sure everybody knows, but we're in the upper Northwest Indiana, right by Lake Michigan. Some of the attractions there obviously are the Ameristar Casino, East Chicago Marina. The Gary Airport is located about 4 miles south of our bridge, and we connect over the canal, as you can see there. Next slide, please. I want to highlight a couple of these because as Klein Avenue Bridge, we really want to develop a map and reintroduce the route to people. So this is the access points on our bridge. As you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 access points to access our bridge. The next step that we're going to do is highlight the businesses and attractions around this. And that's for marketing purposes, because one of the incentives that we encountered, or one of the tasks that we knew that we had to take on, is the bridge has been down for 11 years. And a lot of individuals, a lot of carriers, a lot of people found alternate routes around Klein Avenue Bridge. So really our goal is to reintroduce the Klein Avenue Bridge, to educate where the Klein Avenue Bridge is. And then, as I'm going to show you a little bit later, is to offer incentives to actually take the bridge and see how valuable and the positive impacts it has on not only Northwest Indiana, but surrounding communities. Next slide, please. So some of the benefits, and again, this is all the premise to reintroduce the Klein Avenue Bridge to Northwest Indiana. It provides the most direct route into Lake County, most time savings route to Chicago, reduces local congestion, as we understand how busy the Borman is, how busy Klein Avenue is, how busy Kennedy is, how busy Calumet Avenue is. So this is really a kind of a primary secondary route for overflowing of congestion. It renews the critical regional transportation link. We are a truck route. We never lost that designation off of SR 912. So we see a valuable aspect of rerouting a lot of trucks to SR 912 off of the city streets, and we're working really closely with Mayor Copeland in East Chicago to further that mission. It reduces pollution from idling vehicles by creating free-flowing traffic. It provides first responders a faster route across the canal and railroad tracks, shortening emergency call response times. And it allows public money to be used for area needs. Since the Klein Avenue is publicly funded, we provide 10 cents out of every toll paid back to the city of East Chicago to use over their discretion. We don't have any oversight on that, so that helps out the community. And then it drives economic advancement. If you ever driven in East Chicago or Gary or even Hammond, obviously we talk about a lot about that, is there's a lot of development really happening in that little corridor in Northwest Indiana. Next slide, please. And this just shows you, and again, I'm kind of reiterating most of what everybody knows, but how close we are to Chicago. And with Chicago opening up now, anticipated July 4th, that we see a lot of travel actually using the bridge from downtown Chicago. So what our goal is, that is to show people how close we are to Chicago, but also we're locating by zip codes to see how many people come from Chicago, where are they going in Northwest Indiana, and maybe Ty, in the near future, your team and my team could share some data and really figure out what our goal is in Klein Avenue Bridge is origin and destination, right? Where are people starting out from and where are they going? And then being able to expand on that. So next slide, please. So we did some time studies, and I have 2 slides up here from sample routes from East Chicago Marina to Willis Tower. Klein Avenue to the I-90 is about 30 minutes. And the alternate route is, most people know, the I-94. It's actually 41 minutes. So we could see a definite time savings and mileage savings with using the Klein Avenue Bridge. Next slide, please. We also took a time study from Griffith to Navy Pier. And as you can see, taking the Klein Avenue Bridge saves you 11 minutes over the taking the I-94 corridor. Next slide, please. So as everybody knows, obviously, you know, summer is coming upon us, a lot of congestion, a lot of construction, and we really see ourselves as a primary secondary route because we look at it as there's a lot of feeder routes to SR 912 and or Klein Avenue. There's top 5 feeder routes is the Borman, I-90, US 20, Calumet Avenue, and Indianapolis Boulevard. So there's a lot of options, but we look at it as promotion of primary, secondary route to relieve a lot of that congestion. Next slide, please. We also, in our goal, we have really three main goals. One is to educate the public, create awareness, and then offer incentives. What our main goal is to help out the communities by rerouting a lot of the carrier traffic. And again, it's a general term in trucks. So we put out a pilot program to reward frequent users of the Klein Avenue Bridge, specifically to carriers. Rewards frequent users. We have a tiered program, as you can see there. And the moniker is you drive more and save more. And that's just not meaning save more money, save more time, but obviously repair costs on the vehicles using it. There's no stopping and going. They save money if they involve themselves or enroll themselves in our program. There's fuel cost savings. There's emission savings. So as a company, we really look at not just the benefit to the community, but as a whole in Lake County. Next slide, please. So we are a tolling facility. We're all electronic. And as I said before, there's no stopping and going. If anybody has driven that and you have an iPass or Easy Pass, it's an easy drive. Now carriers have a number of different transponders that we also register or accept. Not only the iPass, Easy Pass, but they have a Best Pass, a Pre-Pass, which is specific to carriers. So this just shows you the tolling structure. Next item, please. One of our big pushes is, again, when we looked at this, again, I'm from Northwest Indiana, and I've always been involved in a lot of these community engagement programs. But as a company, we really want to ingrain ourselves and show that we really do care about the community and how we could benefit the community. These are some of the programs that we're currently involved in: the Boys and Girls Club, the First Tee program, Junior Achievement, Humane Indiana, East Chicago Park District, School City of East Chicago, and Boy Scouts of America. So we continue to promote our awareness of these programs because we really value the community involvement and fostering of a lot of the children in the area to succeed in life. And this is one of our biggest pushes. So thank you. Next item, please. This just gives you a highlight of what we did over the last year and a half. Obviously, absent of COVID, we plan to re-engage once we're opened up a little bit more, but we had the Cub Scouts when we were in construction come out and we walked the site. And this is a picture of one of the Cub Scouts actually building a bridge with our engineers on site. So that was a fun thing for us to do. Participated in junior achievement throughout the community. And we're really ingrained in the East Chicago Boys and Girls Club. We did a rendering of the Klein Avenue Bridge at the club in East Chicago, and we promoted the rock climbing wall behind the artist there. And that is my last slide, but I want to end with a couple questions. If anybody has any questions about the Klein Avenue Bridge and the impact that it has on the community, and or just me personally coming from Northwest Indiana and being part of this project. Any questions?
I just want to, if I could, I just want to throw in that this is, as Terry said, this is such a unique project for Northwest Indiana, but also, in the country. I mean, as he said, no funds did not come through NERC for this project, so this is very, very unique. We considered it in modeling, doing the congestion models that we do for our overall network, since things have to travel across this bridge, but no NERC dollars were used. So very, very unique and innovative project, and was thrilled to be able to drive over that inaugural run over the bridge.
And I appreciate that, Ty, and I want to add to that in terms of the uniqueness of the project. And we are a private business, but again, I just go back to our role and responsibility. We understand our role as part of infrastructure, and Matt Deitzley's team over at INDOT, and I think we formed a great partnership in understanding those roles. How do we affect the infrastructure, and what is our role? Our number one role is community safety, traveling public safety, and we're constantly working at how we could strengthen that relationship and be conscious that that is our number one goal. So I appreciate it. And again, thanks Ty and NERC for supporting us, and anything that we could do at Klein Avenue Bridge, we're all on board. So thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you to the commissioners. I appreciate you allowing me time to update you, and look forward to more meetings in the future.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Veligan. It's a long overdue project that's finally at hand.
Yes, it is. And it's been gone for 11 years. And it's really, what we're finding out is, even though 35,000 vehicles crossed over the old bridge, it's really re-educating people and creating awareness that it's open again, because we're still finding people that don't know about it, even though we put out a big marketing campaign, and we're constantly in that forefront of educating and creating awareness. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bob Carnahan, Terry, I'd just like to say congratulations.
Well, thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. And I know you and I spoke many times on how this could create a positive impact for Northwest Indiana, and even for the south suburbs, because we're seeing a lot of people from Crown Point who live in Crown Point and still travel up to Chicago for work. So it's going to cut down their commute time as well. So thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
Okay, are there any other comments? Okay, hearing none, moving along to INDOT. Matt Deitzley has expressed his regrets. Ty, have you heard anything more recent? Is there any?
I have not. I don't think we have anyone from else from INDOT present. Matt had jump in if I'm incorrect, but I don't see anyone else from INDOT. He said he'd be glad to take your questions after, and apologizes that he had an urgent issue to attend to this morning. So he's always available for you to reach out to directly. He's happy to take your questions later.
Okay, so that being said, we'll move on to the next item of business, which is other business. Is there any other business? Hearing that, we'll move on to announcements.
Yes, Bob Carnahan.
Mr. Carnahan, take it away.
All right, on the second and fourth Wednesday of the month, we have a farmer's market down at our town grounds. And the last one we had last week we had traffic, I believe, a half mile backed up trying to get to our farmers market. They had 134 booths and it was packed with people. So what the Cedar Lake Chamber of Commerce is going to do, they're going to be down on the town grounds for their business showcase on Saturday, June 12th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And it's open to the public. So I'm urging everybody to come down to our business showcase and maybe visit our farmers market on the second and fourth Wednesday of the month.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Any other
Thank you.
announcements?
As Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Mitch Barloga. I just want to remind the commissioners that we do have plenty of bike maps available for pickup at our office. They come in boxes of 200 apiece. Many of our communities have yet to come by our office to pick them up, which is understandable with COVID, but we have the access available from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Meredith Stillwell in our office is more than happy to accommodate those who come by, but you please need to contact Meredith directly. You can contact via email. We'll probably get an email out to you all to kind of also resend that to make sure you understand what the process is. You let her know you're coming by and we'll give you the maps that you need for your community.
Okay, thank you, Mitch. Are there any other announcements? Yeah, I just would like to thank everyone for attending and like to remind all those when you have an opportunity to talk to other commissioners who haven't attended, to remind them that there is a requirement that they must meet a certain amount of attendance, or there are issues that we must have to do, and we're going to be looking into that with what we can do. Ty, would you like to make a last minute comment on that?
Not particularly, just that, as George said, there is, as I mentioned, the state statute we do have in place does have provisions for what should happen in the event that a commissioner has missed more than 3 full commission meetings, and will likely be just reminding communities about the importance of representation here. And I just want to add on to something Justin Keel had said earlier, because I think it's absolutely true. And I've personally witnessed it for my, what have I been here, 8 years plus at NERPC now, is that the items on the agenda are only really half the value. This goes back to the question about, what we miss in these kind of settings sometimes, is that the discussions that happen before and after, just connecting with other commissioners and finding out what each other are doing and building those relationships, that is a prime value. And so I just wanted to underscore what Justin had mentioned. The agenda is really, they're very important items, obviously, because we're talking about real money and how things are getting spent and invested in the region. But it's those offline communications that really build a region and really create the kind of Northwest Indiana that, well, to go back to something earlier that Jim Ranfran's worked to create, and that I think we all have worked really hard to build, is one that cooperates with each other and collaborates with each other, tries to share resources, and tries to move forward together. So it's important to have participation, and I know you all know that because you're here. But thanks, George, for mentioning that.
Okay. Yeah, the networking is very important. The networking that we do at NERPC is very important. Thank you, Ty, for mentioning that.
And thank you, Jim, and thank you, Ty and Justin, and thank you all in attendance for your participation. And I appreciate it. Remember, next month we get a break, so we'll see you in July, hopefully in the flesh. So, and remind all those who weren't able to attend today that we have a full commission meeting, if I'm not mistaken, and we encourage all people to attend all the time because it's really nice to see everybody. Thank you again very much. And without, if there are no other issues, meeting is adjourned. God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.